Can the Dallas Cowboys win the NFC East this year? Dak Prescott is finally going to be healthy. Zeke might be washed. They lost Amari Cooper and Randy Gregory, and Tyron Smith is out for half the season. Disaster has struck in Dallas.
Big episode, not big, but important episode. We have a Dallas Cowboy fan here, aka John, in case you didn't know, and we're both in Texas. So big topic, obviously, because they're America's team, and that's where we will start. In regards to what they did this offseason, offloaded Amari Cooper, sent him to the Browns in a trade. Also lost wide receiver Cedric Wilson, lost a couple of linemen in Leo Collins and Connor Williams, edge rusher Randy Gregory, and then also safety / linebacker hybrid Keanu Neal. But they did add edge rusher Dante Fowler, linebacker Anthony Barr, wide receiver James Washington, who unfortunately got injured pretty early on here. Kicker Brett Maher is back as a Cowboy. And then in regards to the draft, they grabbed Tyron Smith in the first round, linebacker Sam Williams in the second, and then wide receiver Jalen Tolbert in the third round. And once again, John, what are your expectations heading into year 3 of Mike McCarthy?
Well, the big news right now, and we're actually re-recording this for anyone who doesn't know, and at the time this was not news, but left tackle Tyron Smith, he has gone down. And initially when I talked, I had mentioned that the offensive line depth concerned me, and this is probably the worst case scenario for the Cowboys outside of maybe a Dak or a Micah Parsons injury. Tyron Smith, although he may not be the best player along the offensive line, I would give that award to Zach Martin. I would argue he's the most important because he is the left tackle. That's the most important position on the offensive line. And also, the guards are easier to adjust for because you can often allow your center or the tackle on that side to help double team. For the tackle, if you're going to do that, it means your tight ends have to block more. Even with the guards, you can often leave a running back in and just ensure that they're not going to get overwhelmed. And so on the edge, you have to either bring a tight end to help or you got to bring the running back in, and it's a little harder to check and release. And so I'm really worried about the offensive line. I know we made a lot of good additions, and I like specifically what we did on defense. I like the additions of Dante Fowler, Anthony Barr, Sam Williams. I feel like all three can provide value as an edge rusher, so I think all three of them can try to fill the void that we have with Randy Gregory leaving. And so I'm not too worried about the defensive side of the ball in that regard. Also, Micah Parsons going into year 2, Trayvon Diggs going into year 3. They brought Leighton Vander Esch back. Just certain guys who've been around that have been good performers with Dan Quinn. I think that he can ensure the defense is going to be solid. I would even expect potentially the defense to be the best side of the ball for this team. So look for that to maybe happen. But offensively, I'm very worried. Just with the Tyron Smith injury, the part that worries me is I fully expect Jerry Jones to do what he does, and that's say, we like our guys, and we're not going to go out and sign anybody new to play left tackle. And in that scenario, which I know I know that Andrew Whitworth had mentioned the Cowboys did reach out to him. That's not going to happen. If Whitworth was to unretire, it's going to be with the Rams. He just won a Super Bowl with them. I cannot envision him unretiring to go play for somebody else unless they were paying him such an absurd amount of money that it would just be laughable. And I don't think that's going to happen. So Andrew Whitworth's not going to happen, and I worry that the Cowboys are not going to be willing to go out and get an Eric Fisher or trade for an Isaiah Wynn, different guys like that who are currently available on the market, and that's what I want them to do. I think Eric Fisher for 3 to 4 months of the season could be a fantastic tackle. You sign him for the rest of the season, and that means that when Tyron Smith does come back, Eric Fisher can be your swing tackle, and that would be an amazing proposition because then you actually have really good tackle depth at that point. If you trade for Isaiah Wynn, he's very young, so maybe you re-sign him long-term, and that means that he is your future left tackle. Maybe he even moves over to right tackle if Terrence Steele doesn't work out. But if you don't want to re-sign him long-term, well, you don't have to because his contract is up after this year, so the price tag won't be too high. Probably be a mid to late round draft pick, and if he leaves, he leaves. At least you got someone that was good in value this year while Tyron Smith was out. I would love either of those two scenarios, but I really fear that Jerry Jones and this coaching staff are going to go and put Tyler Smith, the rookie tackle who was supposed to be playing left guard. They're going to move him to left tackle and give him these final 2 weeks of the offseason to basically learn an entire, I mean, he played it in college, but an entirely new position in the NFL. It's very different. And I think there's going to be penalty issues. Offensive linemen, there's oftentimes a learning curve to where you have to adjust to the physicality, the speed, the mental warfare of the defensive line, all these different kinds of things that maybe you didn't have to deal with at Tulsa. I think there's going to be a massive learning curve, and so they would put him at left tackle. That means Connor McGovern moves over to left guard, and all of a sudden the left side of your line is just so incredibly weak. I'm still not sold on either Terrence Steele or Tyler Biadasz. I think they're fine, but Tyler Biadasz often has a problem with guys who can overpower him, like a Vita Vea, Fletcher Cox, just a couple different guys that they're going to have to face. The defensive tackles they play in Washington, those two guys are very strong. And then Terrence Steele often has an issue with the same thing, and that's the bull rush on the outside. He's pretty quick, he's good with his feet, but he struggles when people just push straight through him. And so I'm just really worried that the Cowboys' offensive line is going to be such a massive hindrance for them this season that it's going to hold them back. That's really what I'm worried about. There's injuries in the wide receiver room right now. So to start the season, your wide receivers are CeeDee Lamb, who I'm very confident in as the wide receiver one. But then behind him, you have rookie Jalen Tolbert. He has not played in the NFL whatsoever, so there's going to be experience issues there. You have Noah Brown, who's always been a depth guy. He's a good blocker, but he's never had to elevate himself into a real role until Michael Gallup and James Washington come back. James Washington, it could be a month to 2 months before into the season before he comes back. And Michael Gallup, it looks like he might be back in the first 4 weeks, but we can't forget that he tore his ACL at the very end of last season. And an ACL recovery is not something that you can easily come back from. And so I think that it could potentially be longer than that. And so I'm worried about the offense. I think that with the wide receiver issues, I expected them to be very run heavy early on. And that means a lot of Zeke, a lot of Tony Pollard. But without Tyron Smith there, having to move Tyler Smith over to left tackle, McGovern in at left guard, it feels like a hard proposition to be able to sell yourself on being able to be run heavy, because I feel like a lot of teams are going to know you're not going left. You're going to go right behind Zach Martin, and that makes your offense a little one-dimensional. I think that Dak, CeeDee Lamb, Dalton Schultz, those guys can cover up for a lot of stuff, but once again, if Dak doesn't have time to throw, I'm just very worried about the state of what this offense is going to be. I'm not the biggest Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy fans. I think that at times Kellen Moore can just get too cute with his play calling. He tries to do creative stuff that involves rolling out with 7 offensive linemen, and all of a sudden you got Terrence Steele and Lael Collins down the field ready to catch a pass, and in a playoff game, no less. And I don't enjoy that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I think that Mike McCarthy, he talks a big game, but we have yet to see anything come to fruition in terms of discipline. They've been one of the least disciplined teams in the entire NFL since he's become the head coach. And now you lose a guy like Tyron Smith, who is a very disciplined player, and you're going to replace him with Tyler Smith, who has penalty issues. Connor McGovern has a lack of experience, so there could be penalty issues out of him replacing Tyler Smith at left guard. Just the offensive line really worries me. The offense as a whole is starting to worry me. And so, yeah, I still think that Dallas can be a playoff team, but I'm just hoping that Jerry Jones will go out and sign a left tackle. And I hope that's Eric Fisher. If not Eric Fisher, I hope they would trade for Isaiah Wynn. I don't know. Like I said, I'm worried. I think the defense has what it takes to potentially overcome some of those issues. But even then, say the offense isn't able to get a touchdown, I worry about Brett Maher. He was solid for the Saints last year, but the last time he was in Dallas, he missed a lot of kicks. And that was an issue with Greg Zuerlein last year. There was like 4 or 5 games last season that Greg Zuerlein, if he had made all of his kicks, that could have been a big differentiator. And that includes games against playoff teams like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 1, in which they barely lost, and he missed multiple kicks. So if Brett Maher does the same, I'm just worried about the Cowboys' ability to consistently put points on the board. Bad special teams, bad offensive line play, penalties. those three things can just absolutely kill your offense. So I'm worried about the Cowboys. I know that all that negativity could feel a little bit overblown. I still think the Cowboys will be a good offense overall, but I'm just worried about what they can do this season. So, like I said, I still think they could be a playoff team, but I have serious doubts now about their potential to even win this division.
Yeah, I want to start with the offense, like as you were saying. I agree with pretty much everything you said. That offensive line is now more of a concern, especially now that Tyron Smith's gone. And I do like Kellen Moore, but I will agree with you. I'm not sure if it's him and Mike McCarthy or just him. Don't know, but there's an issue I've felt they've had the last few years is that just the inability to tie together. Like you said, sometimes he kind of gets cute. Sometimes like the Kyle Shanahans and even even the McDaniels of the world. I don't know why I blanked on his name for a second. They have very good, and Andy Reid and some of the better offensive minds. They just know how to tie together run plays. So it's like, oh, this, we're running this run play, and then next time we'll hit with the play action looks exactly like this run play. Our alignment or even kind of looks like the run blocking, but it's not.
There's intentionality behind their play calls. They're setting things up.
Yes. There's design. There's just planning, like thinking. I won't say that they don't plan, but like thinking ahead, like just as it's a chess game per se. So that's something that I really didn't see them do well the past few years. Also, like Michael Gallup maybe missing, the first couple of weeks. Like I know week 1 you start off with the Bucks again, and probably not the team you want to be playing with concerns on the offensive line right away. And then just the other point I wanted to throw into was, and I know this isn't necessarily a hot take, but I think we're starting to see towards the end of Zeke. We'll see if Mike McCarthy and Kellen Moore are actually going to reflect what Jerry Jones mentioned, that Zeke's the guy. Because I'm just like, obviously I think he's still really good in between the tackles. He's still a really good running back, but he's just not what he was in his early years. I think he's lost that home run ability. And he still pop off the 10, 15, 20-yard runs and obviously still run really hard with power and speed.
But also, if they involve Tony Pollard, that would allow Zeke to... I think that would make Zeke better, honestly, because if you look at the running back position, when they have just a ton of carries, it hurts their future career. We're seeing that with Derrick Henry. He's getting injured now. And I think that Zeke could be more efficient if they let Tony Pollard actually get a lot more of the carries. Like, if they went 50-50, I think Zeke could have a more efficient season this year than he did last year when he dominated the carries, because his yards per carry have gone down below 4 yards now. And so I think if Tony Pollard was involved more, we could see Zeke actually improve that efficiency because he would have less injuries. Even last year, if anyone didn't know, Zeke, I think he tore his MCL or had some MCL injury. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he had some MCL injury, and it happened in week 4 against the Panthers, and he still got a majority of the carries the entire season. If you let Tony Pollard get more in there, less likelihood Zeke gets hurt.
Yeah, those are my main. I have similar concerns to what you mentioned. I think the passing game will be fine. I think, although pass protection will obviously be a concern, but I think a healthier Dak will help. And then once you get Michael Gallup, and I think we're all expecting CeeDee Lamb to take the next step as a reliable number 1 receiver, and I think he'll do fine there. And Dalton Schultz obviously on a contract here, so I think the offense will probably be middle of the pack if I had to guess. Just once again, but we'll see. Maybe Kellen Moore surprises us and is able to tie together some plays and concepts with Mike McCarthy, or maybe just a healthier Dak in general might just be an overall boost to the team. So then defensively, like you mentioned, I like what they did. Yes, you lost Randy Gregory, but Dante Fowler, like we mentioned before, Randy Gregory only had 6 sacks. I think you mentioned last time we recorded. So I think that's replaceable, the pressure and presence on his side. And then now you have Anthony Barr, so you could maybe on some situations use Micah on the edge and play Barr and Lane Vander Esch, or even put Barr on the edge. Just do a few more creative things that way with on defense. And then like I said, or like you said, expect Diggs to be better this year, and your secondary solid behind them. So Jordan Davis and Anthony Brown, those guys have been solid, even though Brown has had some bad moments per se But regardless, I think the defense will at least be the same. They were middle of the pack last year, which, hey, that's fine. They did force a lot of turnovers though, so we'll see. Cause sometimes the turnover force defense, a year later, if you're too reliant on that, that's not, it's tough to replicate. So we'll see. But I think they should be good to go in that department. And I'm with you. I think playoff team. I don't expect them to be like cream of the crop NFC, but I do expect the Cowboys to be in that playoff picture or conversation come January. So that is the Dallas Cowboys. John's Dallas Cowboys.